Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. This week marked 10 years since the final report from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. APTN's TR Wheatley starts us off with a time of reflection and renewed calls to tackle residential school denialism.
My name's Michelle Robinson. I use they, them.
They are the voice behind the Native Calgarian podcast. Robinson started taking up space in 2018 to educate her city, province, and beyond on the Truth and Reconciliation's 94 calls to action. December 15th marks 10 years to the day the TRC held its closing ceremonies in Ottawa. Robinson recalls a day in era, thinking of her grandmother who attended Sacred Heart Indian Residential School in Fort Providence.
Our survivors finally got a chance to be properly acknowledged. I was really grateful that my granny at the time was alive.
Robinson says she grew up in shame. It was later in their adult years that they began to understand the gravity of what people had to endure.
It's talking about the gravity of what has happened in the past and continues today because of the policies of the past. So for me, that was it's like my religion. It's my goal in life, is that am I honoring my ancestors every single day? And the 94 calls to action, as well as the 231 calls to justice that came from the TRC, like those are things that I can give to people as solutions.
On the weekend,
another solution that's coming to light came in the form of a resolution at this year's Assembly of First Nations annual gathering earlier this month. Chiefs left the event agreeing to press Canada to deal with Indian residential school denialism, including AFN Regional Chief of British Columbia, Terry Teegee.
I think it's really important that the government amend the criminal code to include denialism as part of hate speech. So that's really important, especially as we've seen the increase of denialism here in British Columbia and elsewhere.
TG says reflection is good, but action is needed.
It's always a good reminder after 10 years to do a check-in, if you will. I think it's always important to do a check-in every year, but this is a milestone, and it really demonstrates how far we've come, but also more importantly, how much further we need to go in terms of reconciliation.
To gauge how far Canada's come is Negon Sinclair, an Indigenous Studies professor at the University of Manitoba and the son of the late Chief Commissioner Murray Sinclair.
So about 14 of them are completed in whatever way you want to argue it. About 40 are underway, and then about 40 or so have no process, no action at all. That's a very frustrating experience. My father, during his final days, expressed a lot of frustration to me about that the process was going slow. But he and I both agreed that in 10 years, you saw more change than you had ever seen in the past 150.
As for the denialism that exists, Sinclair has a different theory.
Yes, of course, residential school denialism is a real thing, but I think it's by less people every day. I think there are more people wearing an orange shirt, taking action, doing an event on September 30th, for example, than we ever seen in history, approximately 15 million, according to the Ledger poll.
And while that may be true, Robinson prefers what the AFN chiefs are calling for.
To say Indian residential school denialism should be a hate crime, yes. Long list of many others, including fraud for pretend Indianism. Like there's so many things that we could be really charging people with.
Saying when that happens, we'll only force naysayers to get on board, or at the very least stay quiet or go to jail. Pierre Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A Mi'kmaq chief is calling for an apology from Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston after police countered the Premier's claims that unregulated cannabis is laced with fentanyl. Angel Moore brings us this story.
He should most definitely apologize. I don't know if he knows how to, but he should definitely apologize.
That's Tamara Young, the chief of the Pictou Landing Mi'kmaq Nation. She wants Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston to apologize after the Nova Scotia RCMP and the Halifax police contradicted Houston's comments he made at a press conference last week.
I've talked to people in law enforcement have told me in this province that they've taken illegal cannabis from unregulated illegal dispensaries and tested it and found that it was laced with traces of fentanyl. So, sometimes I hear, I don't buy from the government supply because I don't get the same buzz. Well, that's probably why.
Houston was defending the province's police directive to crack down on cannabis shops that operate outside provincial legislation, calling it a health issue. But in an email statement, Nova Scotia RCMP and the Halifax Regional Police, HRP, said based on the current information, the Nova Scotia RCMP is not aware of any fentanyl having been detected in cannabis products seized by the RCMP from illegal storefronts in the province. And no fentanyl has been found in any cannabis products seized by HRP from illegal storefronts. Young alleges the cannabis crackdown is really about Mi'kmaq sovereignty.
We know that he's been constantly attacking the Mi'kmaq, and now I feel like our concerns and what we were saying, they are now validated.
Young says at first she was angry at the provincial government's actions.
Just recently in the last week or so, it's brought Nova Scotians together. We are now allies more so than ever because we all understand that he is really hurting the public.
The Premier's office did not respond to APTN News' request for an interview by airtime. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabutuk, also called Halifax.
On Wednesday evening, a weather warning was issued to Winnipeg for a major winter storm with high winds between 10 to 20 centimeters of snow. While schools and highways shut down on Thursday, Main Street Project, an organization that serves people experiencing homelessness, was working overtime. Here's Julia Ross with more.
Winnipeg's Main Street Project has been supporting communities for over 50 years and has provided weather response through many Manitoba winters.
Our outreach teams are really focused on supporting people who are living unsheltered in the city, and doing our best to, transport people to safe spaces like pop-up shelters or other spaces that they feel safe going to. When that's not possible for whatever reason, our outreach teams are focused on getting folks the items that they need to stay safe and warm.
Winnipeg has the largest urban Indigenous population, and this August, the 2024 Street Census from End Homelessness Winnipeg reported that out of the 2,469 people experiencing homelessness on November 5th, 2024, 79.9% were Indigenous. Main Street Project accepts monetary donations along with food and currently warm clothing, which helps them help others. Director of Development Cindy Titus says that layers are key to staying warm and to dress top down.
Keeping your head warm with a toque, scarves, mittens, lots of layers, snow pants, warm socks, and good winter boots, and of course winter jackets and things like that. So donations are always needed, whether that's financial donations or clothing donations.
Main Street Project has a year-round outreach van on the road, citywide 24/7, and during the winter months, the organization uses 2 vans across the city to have a wider reach.
During extreme weather like this blizzard that we're experiencing, it is important to remember that people experiencing homelessness are our neighbors and community members, and we really all need to be looking out for each other.
If you see anyone struggling or are concerned for, don't hesitate to call 211 for a wellness check, and always call 911 if there is an emergency. Julia Ross, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Some residential school survivors from a First Nation in Manitoba are traveling across the province, revisiting the sites where some of their toughest memories took place. And as APTN's Sab Jones tells us, the journey hopes to bring them to closure and harness the power of community.
Roughly 4 dozen residential school survivors have arrived at the first stop on their journey to the not-so-distant past. The Lake Manitoba First Nation residents are embarking on a tour of residential school sites in Manitoba, beginning with Fort Alexander in Seguin, Anishinaabe Nation.
We started with Saging because in keeping up with the way of our culture, everything starts from the eastern doorway. So Saging is our eastern doorway. This is our first one. And what a doorway.
Funded through the federal government, event coordinator Delma McLean says the goal is for the group to visit every residential school once attended by its members to help them in their healing journey. There are about 6 living survivors of Fort Alexander in her community, but some chose not to attend this event due to trauma.
A lot of anticipation, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. They have still a lot of bad memories that they've suppressed all these years, and they have not talked about them.
The group was treated to traditional drumming, inspirational speakers, and a hearty lunch before heading out to where the Fort Alexander Residential School once stood. Constructed in 1905, the school housed up to 60 students 10 months a year before it closed in 1970 and later demolished in 1972.
There was debates about whether or not it should have stayed up or not, but I think the majority of the residential school survivors would much rather forget the building, and not have to see it because so much happened to them in those schools.
The school grounds are now home to a band office, the Catholic church which ran the residential school, the graveyard, and an open field. Elsie May Toyashing attended Fort Alexander with her brother for roughly 4 months when she was 15 years old.
Well, I'm sure happy to come and see, but it's so different from 65 years. A lot different. You cannot even see before there was no buildings, just the school itself and a few other buildings.
She says though her time there was short and mostly positive, she did witness another child get hurt.
So I was really scared. I would never do anything or move around or talk because I was scared to get slapped too.
Though many of the residential school survivors gathered at the site attended different schools, they took the opportunity to acknowledge the Fort Alexander students and put to rest some of their own memories.
I hope that they leave what happened to them here, that they have a forgiveness, a sense of hope.
McLean says Manitoba had 18 residential schools, and her group will journey to see more of them in 2026. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Time for a quick break and then a special feature on one mother's fight to get caregivers the respect they deserve. Stick around. Welcome back. Family caregivers are unsung heroes who provide care and comfort to their loved ones, often putting the welfare of others before their own. And many caregivers provide that care not out of obligation, but love for no pay. But advocates say caregivers across the country are in crisis, especially when it comes to finances. And they're calling on Ottawa to do something about it. Here's Sarah Connors now with a special feature on one mother's fight to get caregivers the respect they deserve.
So, this is Selena.
It's a typical morning for Cowis's First Nation member, Georgette Asakin. The day starts with her brushing daughter Selena's hair, a ritual that's part of the daily care she provides.
She's the best person to wake up in the morning because she's always just... When she opens her eyes, it's always like, as soon as she sees me, it's this big smile, like, oh my gosh, I was waiting to see you. Like, I've been waiting all night to see you. Smiling at him and just giggling.
Selena has Rett syndrome, a rare genetic disorder that affects the way the brain develops. At 24, she cannot talk, walk, eat, or go to the bathroom on her own. She requires round-the-clock care.
And we can't erase it, we can't escape it. But the thing that really helps me, ultimately, is just looking in her beautiful face.
But money is tight, and caring for Selena is a full-time job. Asakin says social workers pressured her to institutionalize Selena in the past, but she believes her daughter belongs at home where she is loved and properly cared for.
There's no way I'll ever let anyone take Selena away from me, but I do live with that fear. I live with that fear every day.
While Asakin says she was able to work when Selena was in school, she says finding employment has become nearly impossible since she graduated.
I can't because I can't be at two places at once. And then when I consider the amount of work that I do, the level of care, it's complex care. It's specialized care. I'll put her eye gazer on for you because I know.
Mother and daughter receive around $20,000 combined per year in social assistance. Asakin says it barely covers the basics, if that.
I should be able to have some kind of means to support us. Why does everything constantly have to be so incredibly hard?
A single mother who lives in Whitehorse, Asakin estimates she saved the Yukon government millions by caring for Selena at home. She says she's asked the territory if it would pay her for that care, but was told no due to concerns about abuse of the system. Asakin says she's barely able to hold her family's head above water.
Why are we still struggling? This is worthwhile work that deserves to be compensated fairly.
About half of caregivers have experienced financial distress.
This advocate says while some provinces offer paid caregiving programs, supports vary depending on jurisdiction, and for many caregivers, the financial burden of caregiving typically falls on caregivers themselves.
The situation out there is not great for caregivers right now.
Earlier this year, nonprofit organization the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence released its national caregiving strategy. It calls for a major overhaul of Canada's caregiving system, including introducing a national paid caregiver program.
So we have a roadmap to make Canada the best place in the world to give and receive care.
According to findings in the strategy, Indigenous caregivers like Asakin face even greater hardships like poverty, generational trauma, and challenges navigating colonial systems.
It's really important to recognize the strength that many caregivers carry.
Those experiences are what drive Grant Bruno's work to transform the landscape for Indigenous caregivers in Canada. A member of the Samson Cree Nation who lives in Edmonton, Bruno is the father of 5 children, 2 of whom are autistic. He's spearheading the Indigenous Caregiving Collective with the Canadian Centre of Caregiving Excellence. The new initiative aims to support and connect Indigenous caregivers of neurodivergent children.
I recognize all the challenges that many of our families face, whether it's jurisdiction, it could be isolation, it could be feeling overwhelmed, it could be not being able to get the right supports and services for your families.
While the program is tailored for caregivers of children, its broader vision includes supporting and connecting caregivers and care recipients of all ages.
And so if you can find people who have the same experiences as you, who can connect with you and understand the challenges you're facing, can also provide very creative solutions too.
A spokesperson for the federal government says it's aware of the strain caregivers are facing. They noted several existing supports, like the non-refundable Canada Caregiver Tax Credit, but acknowledge none provide direct compensation. Asakin says those credits have done nothing for her family, as she's never made enough to owe on her income tax.
It's just a token. It's just a figment of our imagination that was put there, and we're told it's there, but who can touch it?
That's no surprise to Gennaro. He says despite 2 federal commitments to make the Canada Caregiver Credit refundable, it hasn't happened yet.
Only about 9% of caregivers access it. And if, like most Canadians, you don't owe any money at the end of the fiscal year, it actually doesn't help you at all.
Yukon MP Brendan Hanley agrees more federal action is needed. He's met with Asakin and promises to advocate on her behalf so caregivers like her can get the support they need.
We certainly need to address the inadequacy of financial support for caregivers in general.
She's been wanting to go on a bus ride since we went to the market last week.
Despite the many challenges in Asakin's path, she has hope. She says recent meetings with federal and territorial officials, including Hanley, have been positive and left her feeling heard. The Indigenous Caregiving Collective also gives her encouragement. But until there's a future where caregivers are recognized for the work they do, Asakin says she'll keep pushing for herself and her daughter.
I'm her everything, and I would do it forever if it meant I had to. I would choose that every single day.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Still to come here tonight, we continue with our 12 Days of Christmas language stories. Stay with us. Welcome back to APTN National News Weekend. Language retention has been something many have worked on this past year, including here at APTN National News. This Christmas season, we bring you our version of the 12 Days of Christmas. And today we share some Tlingit words and memories as we get closer to the holidays.
Hello. Gary Sidney Johnson. When we say things like holidays, we say happy or merry or jolly is Siguwu. The word for Christmas is Kiswas in the Tlingit. And so we could say Siguwu Kiswas, Ka Siguwu Hanukkah, Ka Siguwu Kwanzaa. And so then that way we cover everything. Dleit Ka Wushtik. That means Frosty the Snowman. Dleit Ka Wushtik. It's also how we reference white people. We called them snowmen back in the day. And so growing up, I have like young childhood memories from like before 8 years old, where I'd have grandparents and aunts and uncles singing, celebrating, and meeting. And I felt like I was chasing that feeling for many, many years. And so now I'm an Indigenous Santa Claus for hire. I go by Cindy Claus. And the cool thing about this is my great-grandfather passed away when I was 13 years old. And so I'm having people come up to me now and telling me that I remind them of him and telling me stories that he used to dress up as Santa. Gliu Kwat Shil Tin is a good one. I'll say it again. Gliu Cut Shil Tin. That one's an Indigenous language word, so it has several translations, but it can mean like taking care of yourself, proceed with caution, drive safe. It means all of those things basically, but to do with an intent. One thing that it's famously used in is Santa Claus is coming to town. So this one is Dlikwachiltin Skidagachik Skayaslushik Yisakuge Cindy Plazia Ande Kwagut.
Great stuff. Well, that's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Saturday, December 20th. For news anytime, you can visit our website, APTN News. You can also watch anything we do here, including all of the 12 Days of Christmas series and more over on our APTN News YouTube page. And be sure to join us on Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for your first look at the week's news. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.